Okay, so here we are, interaction, also known as communication collaboration. And I know we've touched on this a little bit here and there, but I would like to go into a bit more depth on that one. So when we look at, I'll just pop all these up here. So when we look at interaction, that communication, that or collaboration, there's a lot going on here. So we have student to student, student to teacher, student to content. And the overarching all around that is that the interface. So if this is a classroom, the interface is the actual face-to-face. With us, for our online courses or the hybrid courses, the online component, the interface happens to be Blackboard. So we'll talk a little bit about how you can have all these great things going on, but without the added supports of these, how can students interact in this? And it's kind of like you have a face-to-face class and a lot of very cool things going on, but the student can't quite open the door. That's the analogy I like to use. So when we look at them, if we break them down, so if we look at student to student and student to content, so what do we want them to be doing? Well, we want them having that supporting discourse. We want them to be discussing the content with another student. And the research shows that whoever's talking is the one that's learning. So when the students have that content to discuss and have the opportunity to communicate or collaborate with one another, you can get this supporting discourse. So that's the role of this one. We look at student to teacher and student to student. Well, that's where we're setting the climate. We are usually the first person to post in the discussion board. We usually have, netiquette used to be called, or norms, class norms. And then, of course, one of our main roles as an online teacher is student to teacher and that content. Well, we're the ones normally selecting those learning resources. Yes, the students can have some choice, but we're usually creating that pathway for them to move through. And in that perfect world, of course, you have the learning in the middle. So for this section, you're going to participate in a wiki where I'm going to ask you, well, what am I doing as a teacher already to support this student to student, student to content, and student to teacher? What am I already doing, and what could that look like online? So one last point, one thing I always like to point out is, so we have teacher to student, student to student, and then we have the content over here. And I always like to think of the content as the lens. So anytime you're getting them to communicate or collaborate with each other, you're using that content or your course materials as the lens for them to talk through. And that might seem common sense, but that's when it can always go back to the integrated learning design, where we know that what we're teaching aligns with what our objectives are, and what our objectives are we are assessing and giving feedback on. So now I'm going to ask you to go over to the wiki and answer those two questions of how do I foster this interaction in the classroom, and what would or could this look like online. And one final thought for you to consider is, well, what supports or resources could you provide to your students to help with this interaction? And again, this is just for your own consideration. If you're going to have a journal, if you're going to have a wiki, if you're going to have all these different things, what additional supports would you need to have over a class discussion where that's more, the students are used to that? Okay, so you have your readings to do and you have your wiki to participate in, and we'll see you next week, next Wednesday, and that will be for Greg's session all about creating media for your class.